Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another conversation. So this week we are talking about the topic of perspective. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, and I share it in the leadership development programs that I do, as well as resilience. It's one of the unique opportunities that we have to change how we see the world. And by doing that, we can actually change how we feel about certain things and also make better use of our energy. In terms of perspective, there's so much information that is available to all of us at all times, and we can't possibly take everything in. And I remember as a kid thinking that everything that I took in and how I viewed the world was how everyone else around me would view the world. And so this conversation is a bit of a special one because I am joined by both of my sisters today, which is quite unique, and we've never done this online before. If you can imagine, face to face, that often we don't agree on things, and now that we're all well into adulthood, we've stopped pulling each other's hair, but we are definitely not above having inappropriate, immature arguments with each other when the occasion fits. So I want to thank Narelle Burke, who is the Global Head of Talent, Learning and Leadership Development, and Kristy Flett, who is Quality Assurance Manager at a chicken farm. I'm allowed to say that?
It's a chicken abattoir, but farm. They come from the farm. So. Chicken processing plant.
Thank you. Sorry about that. But thank you so much for agreeing to share your thoughts and views on perspective. So I'm wondering, as the middle sister between you, Narelle, and Kristy, that whether you actually viewed the world the same as what I did when I was younger. So I sort of looked at the world and everyone in it as being completely like me and seeing things the way I saw them, and taking in, making sense of things the way that I did. What are your, like, Narelle as an older sister, I know we've always argued about how things happened in the past, but how did you I guess take on perspective when you were younger?
So it's a really interesting question, Charles. So I think we had a number of conversations, probably sort of early 30s, when I was in some of the leadership roles, and we were reflecting on childhood experiences and different activities and events that had happened. And your recollection was completely different to mine. So I had interpreted events in one way. I had a particular memory of the way things happened. And what really surprised me was just how different they were. And so I think, based on those conversations that we've had over the, sort of the last decade or so, has been around, we all filter information really differently. It's based on our experiences of the world and what we see and pick up. And we're processing so much information that I'll pick up completely different things to you because they're important to me, or they've reflected in a particular way. And I think it's a worthwhile activity to go through. Even if you've got children, you've got a partner, you've got different friends, and just actually asking them, what did you experience in that moment? And what did you take away? And I think people would be surprised by how different it is. And that's why when you look at, when you share testimonials or quotes, or you go into any particular sessions, people take out very different things depending on what they're looking for and what they need in that moment. So I think perspective is really important, and people will have different views.
What's your view, Kristy? And I feel weird calling you Kristy. Can I call you Punky? Or
I was just about to say, I did not recognize that name, and I don't know who you're talking to.
So for all our listeners, Kristy, when she was younger, used to wear fluoro-coloured socks, and one was orange, one was pink. She used to have it was Punky Brewster, and so I've been calling her Punky for a number of decades, and it feels weird not to. So,
and my wonderful partner has continued the tradition and got me Punky number plates for my motorbike, or number plate. So that's very cool.
So what did you think about perspective? Did you think that everyone saw the world the same way as you did when you were younger?
Yes, clearly they didn't. Because as we've had conversations when we've gotten older, we've been sitting around the table talking about things, and I'm like, that's not how I remember it at all. But I also think it's important to recognise that different members of the family had different expectations put upon them as well. And being the younger sibling, I wasn't expected to do most of the things that Narelle and Shelley were expected to do. So I was the little one on the dairy farm and I didn't have to milk the cows. I had to do meaningless activities like collect sticks for the fire that took 3 hours, and David and I climbed trees and dug holes and caught animals and just did random things, and it was heaps of fun. Life was fun. The farm for me was the best years of my life. I loved it. When we got to the orchard, it was completely different. I had to work then and I wasn't overly fond of that. So I think our perceptions were completely different as children because I was just allowed to be a free spirit when I was little. Sorry about that. But I had no idea that was the case at the time. It's only looking back that I realised that.
And I object with Kristy's view of the world.
Yeah, I loved the farm. It was awesome.
Whereas, you know, Narelle and I, it was the early mornings, the frozen fingers that you couldn't feel because they were wet or cold or both. And
oh, hang on. I know the wet feeling because I actually fell over in a paddock on the way to school one day when my sisters decided to take me on a shortcut and I was covered in mud. So they made me get undressed. They washed my clothes in a channel and they put them back on me wet. And it was an autumn or a winter day. It was freezing regardless. And I got to school and the teachers put me in the spare clothes because I was dripping wet. So I know what it's like.
I recollect that on that memory. I thought we were innovative and creative.
I had pneumonia.
We were quite resourceful. I love it. And I mean, we could talk about, you know, the stories of us growing up and what was important. I think, you know, we all grew up in the same household. Mum and dad had the same values and continue to have the same values. And while there's a lot that we, I guess, viewed and experienced as being different, what's really interesting is that there's things that bring us together, that unite us, that we are completely on the same page as each other with. We all work hard. We all look for opportunities to do things differently. We're all okay with a bit of challenge. And I think that overall we're quite resilient. And that could just be my perspective. So keen again to hear from you. Punky, what are your thoughts around that?
100%. We were definitely raised the right way. We probably worked harder than most children. However, I think it's shaped us to be the people that we are today. And there's not one of us that doesn't work our butts off to get to where we want to be. We're all ambitious and, you know, we put our minds to anything, we can do it. And I think our core values and strengths they were instilled at a very young age by mum and dad. And, yeah, I think we're all on the same page with that.
So mum and dad were consistent with that, at least, which was
so consistent. Yeah, they made sure of it. Yes. Don't disrespect the family name when you start working at craft, or I'll make sure that you never forget it. Yes,
we got the same lecture.
Yeah.
If you're going to do a job, do it properly or don't do it at all.
You don't get anything for nothing. So I think on resilience, like just in bucket loads. So if I think about the different challenges that you go through and different stages of life and changing jobs and the obstacles that come your way, I think, you know, there was no out at home. There was no way of not getting something done. There was no way of saying it wasn't good enough. You had to, you know, mum and dad were really clear on what you had to do, how you had to get it done. They were pretty, not relentless, but there was an expectation and you had to make it work. And so I think how that translates into life in the workplace is there isn't too much that can be thrown at you, which is going to go, I can't do that, or I don't want to engage. You can always find your way and push through it. And so I think that, you know, everything from having to get down to the bus stop, to get to school, to participate in stuff, to the work you had to do, to working together, I think really prepared us for that. There isn't a lot that would challenge us, I wouldn't think, in terms of not being able to get it done.
I was just thinking of something else, the don't just stand there thing. So there's people at work, new starters, that are just standing there and something's happening and they're just standing there. And I just turn around and I'm like, are you going to just stand there? And I think, my God, if Dad was here, he would flip it. Like, don't just stand there. It doesn't matter what you do, but you just do something. Don't just stand there. Not going to help.
And I think this is like, it's a really interesting, I guess, area to talk about, because it's where frustration comes from. It's when you grow up hearing the same things, and the things that the three of us agree on clearly have been drummed into us repeatedly over a long period of time and have served us really well. I think the memo that mum and dad probably forgot to tell us, or actually, no, I think they did, is that not everyone thinks the same as you. I'm pretty sure I did recall mum or dad saying that at some point, and I quickly disregarded it and continued to have, high expectations of other people. But it continues to come back to me throughout my career, is where I'm seeing something and it seems so plainly obvious and someone else completely misses it. It is really hard not to take it personally and to feel like they are intentionally being defiant or being a pain in the butt. What input on that one?
So I probably have a slightly different lens on it, because I think growing up, so there's sort of two schools of thoughts. One is surround people who you want to be like, who are successful. And the other one is have different groups of people so you get different views and perspectives on life. And I think the thing that mum and dad were really good at is we had so many different people around us from different walks of life, different socioeconomic backgrounds. They were just a completely, do you know what I mean? Like, there were so many different people that came through our lives as kids. And I think you got to experience the world in a really different way, rather than just having the same people around you all the time. So I think that was interesting. And then I think the other lesson that came through, particularly from mum and dad in work, was talk to the people who are actually doing the work to get input and feedback on what's working and what's not. And so if I think about one of those two lessons together, which is surround yourself with different people because they'll have different views and perspectives, and talk to the people who are doing the work because they've got the views on how to make it better and do it. Talk to your leaders, but talk to the people who are actually on the shop floor and doing stuff. And that used to drive mum and dad nuts, because they knew the answers to some of the issues and no one ever asked. And so I think that I would take that away, which is, I didn't get so much about the frustration on expectations, although I have high expectations of myself and others. But I do think they taught us about getting different people's points of view to build it into your thinking.
What's interesting about that, Narelle, is that that's one of the things that you're commended on in terms of your leadership style with your team, is that you continue to meet with everyone across your business, that you get to know each other. You get to know them personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, again, if you recognize that people have different views of the world, then you should be talking to different people at different points in the organization across different teams. And I'm sure you experience the same thing, Kristy, is different people have different views, and you should be across them.
So what about you, Punky? Like, you do you get frustrated when there's an expectation, particularly when you're busy and you're trying to move fast? Do you get? I mean, surely you're with me on this one. You get frustrated?
Yes, I rang you about this.
Yeah.
So my frustration comes. It's actually kind of triggered something there, because I understand where the frustration comes from. It does go back to our childhood, and my perception of it, I was always told to ask questions. If you don't know, ask a question. Don't just stand there, you don't know. Ask a question, use your initiative. And so some of the time, some of my employees just don't ask a question and don't do it. And then later they're like, well, I didn't know what you were talking about. And I just think, my God, just ask the question. Why wouldn't you not ask? And they're like, oh, because then you'll think that I don't know what I'm doing, and you might think I'm stupid. And I'm like, well, I kind of think you're stupid because you didn't ask the question. So just ask the question, because there's never a dumb question. And I'm never going to get annoyed with you for wanting clarification on anything. I'll get annoyed if you just don't do it. And the reason is because you didn't know, because you didn't ask the question. So that's where a lot of my frustration comes from. Some of the frustration is also, I set clear deadlines, I give clear instructions, and then I say, please let me know if you need any support with this, if you have any issues getting it done before the deadline. Don't tell me the day before or on the day. Give me a couple of days notice and I'll support you however I can to get it done. But I don't expect it to just not be done because you don't understand and you don't meet deadlines. And I think I've worked with the team enough now, though, for them to know what my expectations are, and the frustration is diminishing. I had a thought about what else you said. I've just got to trigger my memory now.
So just on that, do you think that trust plays a big role in taking on different perspectives and being open to different ways of operating?
Yeah, I suppose people are going to be vulnerable with you if they don't trust you. And I think I've earned the respect and trust of my team members. In terms of what you were talking about earlier about talking to people on the front line, that's a really important thing. I started working at Kraft when I was 18. I started working in the bulk plant with my dad, and my mum was in the process plant. Both the girls had left by then and moved on to bigger and better things. And I remember when I first started there, Dad was raving about the plant manager. Can't exactly remember his name. He was there just before I started, and he said he walks through every day and says hello to everyone, and he's just the nicest guy, and people have got full respect for him because he interacts with everyone. And then we got a new manager, and he didn't do the same thing. And I was like, wow, visitors are just walking through, and we'd literally have visitors from Port Melbourne that would come and stand right next to me when I was running the machine, and they would be literally a metre away, and they would not speak to me, make eye contact with me. And they'd be having a discussion with the manager about the machine and the issues and the problems. And they'd just be chatting away. And I'd be thinking to myself, I know the answer to this question and I know how they can fix it. And they're just standing there acting like I'm a nobody, and they're not even acknowledging my presence. And I went home and spoke to mum and dad about it. And I said, when I become a manager in whatever field, I am not going to treat people like that. And I worked my way up the company ladder and worked in the lab, and then QA coordinator, and eventually now I've become a senior QA manager at a massive company. And ever since I've started doing QA management, I've made it a key point to walk through all the areas, say hello to everyone. I'm as friendly with the toilet cleaner as I am with the general manager. And I don't care who you are, I treat everyone with the same respect. And whenever we do investigations into customer complaints or any other issues that we have, I go straight to the source first and speak to them. I get them upstairs, get them involved in root cause analysis and investigations. And it never used to be done like that. And people do ask the question, why have you got the machine operator up here? You should be talking to the supervisor. And I said, no, you should be talking to both.
Yep.
The machine operator knows the issues and the supervisor needs to know about the issues. So you need to have them both up here, and it needs to be a collaborative approach.
Oh, I love that. And I think you've summed that up so well around perspective. Perspective is so important when it comes to collaboration and being able to bring to different points of view. And I think about innovation. Innovation doesn't exist without different perspectives, and it doesn't exist without the trust that people can talk to you about their different views on things without a fear of you judging or responding in a certain way. And so, it's really interesting points. And, Punky, when you're talking about people not asking questions because they thought that, that you might think that they're stupid, it's not an unrealistic expectation to have, because there are people and, old school bosses out there who would think that, and they would hold you back, and you sometimes would be at risk of losing your job. And it's a fear that I think runs so deep. And this is part of the reason that I have these podcasts and conversations with people, is to open up the conversation and help just to improve how people see things.
I think with our different fields and where we work, that ability, we call it psychological safety, and it's as simple as, do I feel I can speak up and have a point of view, and I'm okay to do that, and I'm not going to face anyone firing me or telling me off. And it's such, whether you're working with Kristy or you're working with me, it's the same fear. It's different industries, but it's the same fear. And I think, managers have an absolute responsibility to go to the source, to ask questions, to help people feel that they belong and that they're valued. And I think we need to change the way we lead. The hierarchy just doesn't work the way it used to, and particularly in today's environment. So creating those safe places where people can talk up and feel free is how you're going to drive productivity and efficiency and safety and innovation. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the title without the responsibility behind it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have people coming into my office constantly. Some of them are just tourists wanting a chat, but there's a lot of them that bring in topics and issues, and they go, this has been going on for years, and we know that you care and you're going to do something about it. And I'm like, why are you telling me? But they all feel safe coming in and speaking to me, and just a lot of it isn't my issue, but it is good to know that they feel they can come and speak to me.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I think, you know, one of the dangers, coming back to the assumptions that we make, is when we share one or two or three things in common with someone else, we suddenly start to think that they are us, that they are like us, that they see the world the way we do. Yeah. And I know I've fallen into the trap before, where I've had someone who has, I totally agree with that. Yep, I completely agree with your views on you know, a number of different things. And then I develop a belief that they think the way that I do. And so when they do something that goes against one of my beliefs, that's where I take things personally. But it's forgetting that we can agree on 70% of the things. There's still 30% that we might not. And just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I don't value you, doesn't mean I want to intentionally upset you or anything like that. And so I think it's really important that we respect that you're not going to be the same as anyone. And we know this as sisters. We can agree on heaps of stuff, but gosh, give us an argument. We'll go there.
It's like raising the kids. Like, you know, I get along with them wonderfully 90% of the time. You're the best mum in the world. We love you more than anything. And then I tell them something they don't want to hear, and they're like, you're the worst. And I'm hated for half an hour. But you just need to be clear that I love you. It's your behaviors that I'm not happy with, and that's separate to who you are, and let's just move on. Yeah, it's kind of no different in the workplace, except they don't love you and they're not your children, and you can't take things off them as much. But same but different.
And it's such a good point. I think part of it is recognizing that everyone has a story, everyone has a journey, and we are all different. Even though there'll be things at a surface level that you may see are the same, people are, you know, different experiences shape you. And I think our role is to stop some of those automatic patterns of thinking as well, Shell. So we all have bias, they're inherent in us, it's how we process the world. But I think you also need to respect the individual nature of people that are in your team. And the old adage, treat people as you want to be treated, isn't true anymore. It's about understanding what they want, what they need, and how you can work with them to support them, and stepping back from some of the assumptions we make. So I'm doing talent reviews at the moment. One of the big things you see is, have you asked the person what they want to do and where they want to go and how they want to develop? Or have you made some really big assumptions based on your view of the world and what you may have picked up and what you may have filtered? And so I think just taking the time to stop, to pause, to not automatically think certain things as a result of being the same, and just step back and really question some of the assumptions we make on people.
Mm. That's great. The openness and curiosity to different perspectives that really makes a difference. And, you know, sharing what you're seeing play out, but not saying this equals that, this is what I've seen. Share with me what's going on for you, and, you know, giving people the support that they need to go away and make the decision. I think what's great is that both of you, you know, say, I'll support you. You just tell me what you want. And I think that's really, really important, that we take on different perspectives. Yeah. So I want to thank you. I think I've got just check in for any final tips on perspectives that you might want to share with any leaders out there. One that I would say, and this is something that I share with a lot of leaders that I work with, is when you get upset about something, is to break it down and go, oh, what actually happened? What could I see, hear, feel, if there was any physical connection there at all? But what could I see and hear? And then what was going on in my head? And then being able to press pause and go, what am I making that mean? And that I can differentiate between my truth and someone else's truth, because how I see the world and then how someone interacts within that helps me to form an opinion about what this must mean. And what I've found is that we generally will come up with one thing that it would mean, and it can't possibly mean anything else. And we dead end ourselves, and we can get frustrated and caught up in all this kind of stuff. But if we can ask ourselves, what else could it mean? And that we brainstorm that, and we don't stop. We just keep going with other possibilities. And as far out and crazy as they might seem, they're still possibilities. And so, yeah, that's my advice would be, just pause when you find that you're passing judgment, or that you're thinking a certain way about someone or something that's not helpful to you, and just hover on it for a little while, get different perspectives. What about Punky? Do you have anything else you want to add?
It's so it's interesting what you're just saying. It just made me think of something in my particular field. So in quality, obviously we have to deal with quality complaints, customer complaints. A lot of them are completely unwarranted, some of them are, but you'll see a certain complaint come through, and it'll be this, and immediately we'll look at whatever it is and say, oh, now that's where it's come from. It's definitely come from here. And on that day, we did have a particular issue with it. But then when you do a full root cause analysis and investigation, you find it was completely unrelated. It had nothing to do with that, and it was to do with something else. And what are the chances that actually happened on that day when we had an issue with that? And sometimes I'm just completely left bewildered that they had nothing to do with each other. And so I use that to explain it to my team that this doesn't equal this. And you have to think completely outside the square with investigations, and you've got to look at things that you would ordinarily in everyday life say, that's not how it happened. It happened because of this.
Yeah, perspective and communication. Gosh, that's really, really valuable. Yeah. What about you, Narelle?
So I think, this has been a really interesting conversation, because I think irrespective of what field you're in as a manager is, taking different points of view on and being willing to receive them. So I think my advice to managers would be, surround yourself with lots of different people and read lots of different things, because we have a lot of divisiveness in the world. We have a lot of tension in the world. And I think if you take a broader perspective on things, you can actually grow, you can change your thinking, you can change your mindset. So I think that's read widely, talk to lots of people, and don't just get a very narrow lens of the world, because I don't think that's helpful. I think the other thing for managers is to talk regularly to different people at different levels in your organization. So you can ask people what they think, and it's okay to take that view on. You may not agree with it, but it's okay to hear it, because they think it anyway. And so I think sometimes as managers, we don't ask what people think. And that just means you don't know. It doesn't mean they're not going to think it. So you're far better off having the conversations, finding out what they think. And I'm sure my team won't mind me mentioning this, but we have global stand-up calls, and the feedback come back in, we're bored, there's not enough interaction, we need more out of it. And I'm like, right, great, you hate them, let's change them. You can change them. We just need to have that conversation and do it. And we did, and they go, it's great, and it'll be great again for another couple of months, and then something else will happen and we'll need to change it. But if you don't get the views, you can't change that as you go through. And I think the other thing is just being really conscious as a leader of how your views and opinions shape your team. And so if you are genuinely wanting to know, suspending your, we call it suspending your agenda, which is if you genuinely want to know people's views, stop talking, start listening, put your agenda aside and find out what people really think. And I think sometimes as leaders, we want to be seen to know, to have the answers, to know what to do. And the better option is to sit back, to wait, to listen and see what our teams and people think. So they're probably three things I'd take away. Surround yourself with lots of different people, read, ask people for their views, and suspend your own agenda and find out what people really think.
Great. And for that, we do need to slow down a little, people. So now is a really good time to be doing that. But as things start to speed up and we start to get into this new normal or whatever it is we're moving into, that we don't lose sight of the importance of just dropping our pace and slowing down a little so that we can take on different perspectives, because it does take time and it takes energy. And Punky, you look like you want to say something.
When did we slow down? I've never been so busy in my whole entire life.
I know.
Slow down. I'm exhausted.
The downhill slope.
But I have a job and I'm incredibly grateful. I don't think I gave any advice to managers before. I was just crapping on about a story that I had.
No, that's. I think you had some really good advice. I think your advice was, be careful around how you communicate things. And what's great is that you've got the trust with your team for them to come back and say, hey, this is what I heard that you said.
Absolutely.
And you've got the opportunity to correct that. You can't do that if you don't have trust with your team.
Agreed.
No, and I think the other thing, touched on what Narelle said, you want to know what their honest opinion is. And I think some people are always going to have a certain view of the world and a perception of how things should be. And, the people at the top don't know what they're doing. And that's fine, but you can't just ignore what they actually think.
Great.
Yeah. Yes.
Just need to keep an open mind and only repeat tiny little bits of what they say and forget about the rest.
Fabulous. So much wisdom and not really a single argument at all today. So that was a little bit disappointing, but I'm sure we'll make up for it at Christmas time in the future. But thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. If anyone wants to connect with either Narelle or Punky, aka Kristy, I will include their LinkedIn links in the comments. So just connect with them. And I look forward to another conversation about dynamic leadership with you. Thank you.
Thanks.